Welcome to the Forces Sports Show, your weekly roundup of the best action and biggest stories from across the services. Coming up in the next half hour. Celebrating Silverware, 11 Signal Regiment win the Army Cricket Final. Who'll be wearing gold? A first look at the medals for the Invictus Games. And where heroes rest, sports stars pay tribute on a charity cycle ride from Twickenham to Compiègne. We start with cricket, where Blandford-based 11 Signal Regiment have been crowned this year's Army champions. They beat 4 Scots by 8 wickets in the final at Aldershot. After being set a target of just 116, 11 Signals eased to a comfortable victory, as Julian Evans reports.
30 teams entered this year's tournament, and after a long summer of competition, it came down to 2 sides determined to finish with the silverware. Having lost the toss, 11 Signal Regiment were put into the field. But the Blandford-based side was soon in business with the ball, as Kisha Gurung dismissed Yaven Granger with just the second delivery of the match. A short while later, the signalman skipper saw off Giovanni Clark, and 4 Scots were reeling at 13 for 2. Catterick outfit 4 Scots had only booked their place in the final 24 hours earlier with a comprehensive win over 4 Regiment Army Air Corps, and must have hoped to continue with their winning form. However, against a well-drilled Signal side, they struggled at the crease. Poor shot selection and 1 or 2 umpire decisions went against them. Julius Glasgow gave the innings some momentum with some well-timed boundaries. The trouble was, none of his teammates lingered long enough to form a meaningful batting partnership. When Glasgow fell for 46 after being trapped LBW by Prakash, a low score for the infantry side was in prospect. And so it proved. As the 4 Scots' tail fell to wag, they were skittled out for just 115, much to the delight of their fellow finalists. With the Signal's flag fluttering over the pavilion by the halfway stage of the contest, it wasn't so much Mercury rising, more in total control. However, they were brought down to earth early in their reply, as 4 Scots bagged the breakthrough they craved. Durgam and Gurung looked to cut the ball, but instead found the fielder, with the score 6 for 1. A second wicket followed a short while later, as 4 Scots tried to claw their way back into contention. Ramesh Gurung undone by the canny Steve Emsley, keeping his delivery low and direct as the signalman slipped to 19 for 2. From there on, though, Santosh Lingdon took centre stage. He dispatched the Infanteer bowling attack to the boundary. As the signallers closed in on victory, Lingdon guided the ball to the boundary to bring up his half-century in style. However, it was Lingdon's teammate Kranti Subba who struck the winning runs as 11 Signal Regiment eased their way to the target, beating 4 Scots by 8 wickets.
It's a dream for us as 11 Signal Regiment, because that's what we dreamt before this season started. So therefore, the time we have put together, I think it's like a dream come true for us, for our team.
So the curtain comes down on the Army cricket season as 11 Signal Regiment are crowned champions for 2018.
With the 2018 Invictus Games getting ever closer, we've been given our first look at the medals that will be handed out in Sydney. They've been produced by the Australian Mint and feature golden wattle, the national floral emblem, to give them an Australian look. The medals also have the distinctive yellow ribbon, and the engraving includes the words from the poem Invictus. The action begins on the 20th of October. Team UK have 72 athletes taking part at this 4th instalment of the Games for wounded, injured and sick veterans and serving personnel. 27 of those will be competing in track and field. Kath Brazier has been to see them preparing in Coventry.
This is what winning means to an Invictus athlete.
To be honest, I was very overwhelmed because I hadn't realised firstly that I'd won. And secondly, that's the fastest I've run. So, yeah, I didn't just get a PB, I smashed it, which means a lot to me, to be honest.
Kelly was clearly moved by her personal milestone, something she's worked so hard for.
I train 4 days a week, without fail. it's just, I don't know, I'm just totally dedicated to it. It means everything to me. It's been my survival, to be honest, and kept me fit, kept me healthy, and probably saved my life, in all honesty.
Last year at the Games in Toronto, Kelly was the only female visually impaired competitor who ran with a guide. Sydney will hold a lot of unknowns for many of these athletes, which coach Joe McDonnell is all too aware of.
When they turn up at Sydney, they don't know who they're running against, they don't know whether they're good, whether they're bad, how much training they've had. So this is all about them being better than they were the last time they trained and just running against themselves. And that breaks down a lot of barriers for them because it builds some real mental fortitude for them as well.
It's that mental fortitude that's pushed people like John to never give up. He was medically discharged with PTSD. He tried out for Toronto but pulled out before selection.
I went for the Games, I did one training camp and didn't feel ready in my own head, so I pulled out, watched the Games on TV, and after they were discussing in the studio, we need more guys with mental health to get off the sofa and get themselves out there. That gave me the kick in the backside I needed, and that was it. The email came out and I said, this year's my year and I'm going to give it a go.
Meanwhile, there's the likes of Debbie O'Connell, a PTI who thought her sporting life was over when she was thrown off her horse, permanently injuring her left arm. She's now seriously looking at taking her athletics to the next level.
It's making me want to look at more into being an athlete more full-time. And certainly taking up the athletics, which is a sport that I thought running, yes, I know how to run, but actually coming and doing the athletics, you realise how much more disciplined it is and how much more you need to do, and it's just taking on a life of its own. So, yeah, I love it.
And as David Atkin puts it, winning isn't everything, but it isn't far from their minds.
I would love to medal. The Invictus isn't really about medaling. It's about taking part in sport again, taking part in some sort of competition, which is what all of us have done previously, before our injuries. I'm going out there for the experience. For me, it's the end of my recovery. Having been injured in 2010, this is like the final thing that I'd love to take part in and hopefully come back with a medal. But if not a medal, then just the experience will be fantastic in itself.
It's now less than 50 days until the Invictus Games in Australia, just a matter of weeks before these track and field athletes compete on the big stage down under.
Now, a former soldier who's running races in 3 of the world's most dangerous countries is preparing for his biggest challenge yet, a marathon across the Afghan desert. Jordan Wiley has already run a 10k race in Somalia and a half marathon in Iraq to raise money for children affected by war. Rebecca Burrows has been to meet him.
So we're 10 miles in, we're in Baghdad. I think it's got a bit cooler, at least it's 39 degrees now.
This is familiar territory for Jordan. He served with the King's Royal Hussars for 10 years and completed 2 tours in Iraq in 2005 and 2007. This year he saw the country from a slightly different perspective in a pair of running trainers.
It was quite emotional to go back to a country where 13 years earlier and 10 years earlier I'd served there as a soldier, lost good friends. I ran 13 years to the day where we lost Corporal Brackenbury. Alan Brackenbury was killed in Alamara on the 29th of May 2005. So that was it was really important for me to, I think for any soldier, when you lose a colleague or a friend in conflict or war, you take it as a personal responsibility and an honour to keep their memory alive. So for me to wear his name on the back of my running vest that day, to go and visit the memorial was very emotional, but also very important and something I needed to do.
Jordan also completed a 10k race in Somaliland in February. He feels comfortable in these conflict zones as he spent most of his life in them. After leaving the military, he took on a job which involved working in Somalia and Afghanistan. He's seen firsthand the impact war has on vulnerable children and took on the running challenge to raise money to help pay for an education for them.
Something I learned later in life is that education can really change your life if you apply yourself, take it seriously and use it to your advantage. I left school with no qualifications, but then through the military, went on to do my bachelor's and master's, and it's opened up so many new doors for me, having the education behind me, and that's something that I want to be able to pass on to other people and share that message.
Jordan wasn't sure if he was going to be able to complete his running challenge. Last year, he was diagnosed with epilepsy, but he said his training for the military has helped him overcome that hurdle.
I think also for the people who out there who have epilepsy, which includes quite a lot in the ex-military and the military community now, is, again, it's just something, it's another risk to manage. You can still go and achieve anything you want. I remember the doctors first saying to me when I started this project, you can't do this, it's not possible because you've got epilepsy. But actually, it's just about managing risk, you know, and that's what we do as soldiers, that's what we've done all our career.
Jordan will complete the full marathon in Afghanistan in October. He knows it'll be the toughest race out of the three, but worth it to help change the lives of just some of the children who've become victims of war.
UK Armed Forces equestrian team have completed their season on a high. They produced their best ever performance in the All England Championships at Hickstead. Hickstead is the pinnacle for the cream of British amateur and many professional show jumpers, so where better for the Forces team to see how they're developing 12 months after their first appearance here. The team has a mixture of new talent and experience.
It's great to have girls who are jumping consistently well at the higher level, to get advice from them just as friends, and then the coach. It's really helpful, and it's brought my riding on so much even in the short term that I've been part of the team.
The RAF's highly experienced Elise Kidd and her Mount Villager just missed out on a clear round in their class, clipping the final fence and ending up with 4 faults. Despite that, a highly satisfying competition.
It's been a really enjoyable week. The whole team's done really well. It's been really large classes and strong competition. So sadly, so far I haven't actually come away with any prizes, but really enjoyed it, and the horses jumped absolutely fantastically.
4 Forces riders, including Elise, were involved in the 1m10 amateur class final. The Navy's Sophie Fuller on Infinity had impressed throughout the whole week, but saved the best for last, going double clear in a very competitive time of 44.39 seconds, which put her right up amongst the leaders. Following her was the Army's Nicola Rush on Silverware, a new pairing. They were in great form, also going double clear and taking the lead for a time in the field of 40. And her time of 42.12 was good enough to give her 3rd place, and with Sophie coming in 6th, represented the best performance of the UCAF team at this level.
He came out great today. They're always tough tracks, they're always big, they're always wide, but it's great. And day 3, he's finally settled down a little bit, a little less spicy and more rideable, so we could put the gas on a little bit more and do some turns, so I'm really pleased with him.
He's a really good horse. She's competed at a very high level, and she's semi-retired, back down to me to have a bit of fun on and to teach me my job, really. So I just got a bit braver today, and I think I put in a few turns that I haven't tried before, and I think it's just when you've got that confidence and you establish that partnership, you can be a bit braver.
Holly Hall was an outstanding performer here on her mount, WKD San Remo, dropping only 4 faults on a very difficult course, a very promising end to her week, and also for the team competing at this level.
I think the fact that we've gone to 3 big shows, we've done Kiso and Hartbury and then come to Hickstead, they've got way more ring experience, and the thing is, time in the saddle and ring experience is invaluable, and the reality is you need that. If you're going to come to Hickstead and you haven't been doing that, then you're asking for trouble. Whereas this time, they've got used to riding in uniform, they've got used to people approaching them and asking questions.
They certainly don't intend to stand still. They're hoping to be the first British military team to compete in the FEI International Championships in Fontainebleau in France next year, which will take them to another level. So plenty of reasons for the UCAF team and their horses to be smiling. A different kind of horsepower now, and Ed McKean has won the 2018 Armed Forces Racing Challenge. The RAF warrant officer took the title after the final set of races at Donington Park from a field of more than 40 drivers. McKean saw off the competition from nearest rivals Chris Slater and Darren Howe, also of the RAF, and the Army's Chalky White. The challenge this year saw the drivers compete in 8 20-minute races over 4 race days at Alton Park, Silverstone, Rockingham and Donington. Now, to mark the 100th anniversary of the signing of the armistice which brought about the end of the First World War, the charity Rugby for Heroes, in partnership with the Royal British Legion, have completed a 300-mile cycle ride from Twickenham to Compiègne. On the way, they visited a number of war memorials, and their venture ended with a star-studded rugby match. Kath Brazier travelled with the team across Belgium and northern France.
Compiègne, where the armistice was signed 100 years ago, welcoming a team of cyclists at the end of their epic journey. 4 Army cyclists, 1 first-time Army veteran rider and Rugby for Heroes patron Mike Tyndall rode in to rapturous applause and were even serenaded by a local. After cycling from England Rugby HQ in Twickenham, they arrived in time to lay crosses and wreaths at the town hall.
For me it's personal. Obviously you get to ride through where the soldiers never came home and see where they fought over 100 years ago. You can't really understand how many people have died in such a small amount of time, and every time I go there it's still humbling every time.
They bring it back to life really well. It never loses any significance or anything. It's a part of history and it's a part of everything that we do now, and it's shaped all our futures.
Compiègne was the end goal, but just one of the many memorial sites they visited over 3 days on the road. Thiepval and Vimy Ridge amongst them.
My great-great-grandfather fought here during the First World War for the Canadian Army, actually. He went out to Canada to work from the UK with his brother. The First World War broke out, so they both joined the Canadian Army, the Canadian artillery, and he rode the horses that pulled the guns. And he spent, I think, about a year here at Vimy Ridge. Yeah, so that it means quite a lot to me to come here.
And seeing the trenches as well, it's quite scary, seeing how close the enemies were together. Having been to Iraq and Afghanistan, it's nothing like it was 100 years ago. Yeah, it's quite surreal, to be honest.
It's just very humbling going to all these locations, and especially at the last location at Thiepval, the amount of people that sacrificed their lives, over a day, 70,000 people injured or killed. It just brings it to life. And serving for the last 19 years, it's a fantastic opportunity to come out and see where people thought out on the battlefield and paid the ultimate sacrifice.
At Guard Cemetery, there was even a surprise for Rugby World Cup winner Tyndall.
So this is the grave of Rifleman Harry Tyndall, who was a school teacher from Skipton and was involved in the Battle of the Somme. And it's very likely that Harry died at that time, early in the morning. And he is the cousin of your grandfather.
20, it's miserable, isn't it?
In support of the cyclists, the rugby players were also given their own tour of the war graves. World Rugby Museum curator Phil McGowan concentrating on the many internationals who lost their lives in the First World War.
So George Eric Burroughs Dobbs, I've chosen as the first one, not because he was the first one to be killed, but because he was the first international rugby player to see action in the First World War.
In November, Compiègne will be at the heart of remembrance ceremonies. But this rugby match between their Vaucluse team and the Rugby for Heroes Select marked the start of their celebrations.
Yes, we don't think about it enough, I would say, because it's part of a routine. But sometimes it's good to have events like this to remember we are living near those special place, and where so many have fallen.
Philippe's team certainly had the numbers, but they faced a couple of French legends, including Serge Betsen, in the opposition's lineup. It was honours even and played in very good spirits, the match fittingly ending 9 tries apiece. The players still very aware of why they were there.
Every grave was 20, 21, 22. I think some stat that almost a half a generation of men were wiped out in that war, and it is quite humbling when you see it and you think what they had to go through, and a lot of the time they were just going into a slaughter, weren't they? And it's I think it's obviously with the armistice 100 years coming up, and it's nice to kick off a remembrance that way.
A lot of reflection,
a lot of trying to get my head around the numbers. You know, just incredible. But I think just glad that I did it and I was there and I experienced it, really.
Rugby for Heroes will be holding another remembrance match on the 11th of November at Richmond Rugby Club, as well as a charity dinner. Their trilogy of events, just one of the many ways the fallen from World War I will be remembered this year.
And that's it for this week. Don't forget you can see all the action as we get it on forces.net and this show and more on YouTube. We'll leave you with action from the Forces' fastest drone racers who've been competing in one of the first unofficial inter-services tech sport events.
Engines on.